Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great. Just not cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gag weight theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer-mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
Welcome. It is hour 2, Toker Talk Radio, coming to you from the Ardea Tower in the South Waterfront District of beautiful legal Portland, Oregon, overlooking acres and acres and acres of legal weed. Beautiful Mount Hood in the distance. Thanks for being here. Glad you could join us for our hour 2 today. Got all sorts of miscellaneous stories I want to get to, but before we get to the marijuana stories, once again, some terrible news going on worldwide where the news out of Nice, France has a truck that was plowed into a large crowd that was gathered there to watch their Bastille Day fireworks promenade with tens of deaths. One report, several dozen dead, total very high, 30 dead, maybe 100 wounded. There was a truck that drove into the crowd over a very long distance. There were shots. The driver was shot. This is on a big scale. Another person who was there at the beach to watch the fireworks said, "We were enjoying the celebrations when we suddenly saw people running everywhere and tables being pushed down by the movement of panic. No one explained what was happening, and I heard some gunshots very far away, or not very far away. About 10:30 p.m., a large white truck drove into the crowd that had gathered to watch the Bastille Day fireworks." That's their 4th of July, folks. That's France's Independence Day, basically. Imagine being a 4th of July fireworks at a beach, and a big white truck just comes plowing through the crowd. Police arrived on the scene and engaged in a shootout with the 2 occupants of the truck. They say the truck crushed everyone in its path and started shooting into the crowd, about 50 shots. Wow. Terrible news. Terrible news coming out of France. And I've got a lot of sorrow for the people of France. That's, my name's Belleville, right? That's kind of my ancestral lands. So it's just a sad thing. And of course, this will be fodder for the various online conversations about gun control. They'll say, gun control, you can get a truck. You can drive a truck into a bunch of people. See? You can drive a truck into people. I don't even want to go there today. Let's talk about marijuana instead. Let's see if we can come up with some good news to talk about here today while we mourn for the loss of life in France. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about the marijuana initiatives on the ballot and the effect those might have on the presidential race in particular swing states. That's some information we're getting out of USA Today. We've also got a report from the New York Times on researchers trying to determine how much weed is in a joint. How much weed is in a joint? Well, it depends on whether you're rolling a Pocatello pinner or a Portland bomber, man. I guess it depends on how you roll. But they've got some estimates now. We'll talk about that. We've also got a stupid prohibition story coming out of Rock Hill, South Carolina. Once again, folks, I have to tell you not to be smoking pot while you're driving. Can't end well. We'll tell you about a new comedy coming up on Netflix. A new pot-themed comedy starring Kathy Bates. Looking forward to that. We've got the report on DUIs from the Oregon Country Fair, one of the biggest hippie festivals on the planet. How many DUIs did they get, and how many of them were for weed? And then we'll take a look at North Dakota. North Dakota could actually be voting on medical marijuana this season. Let's hope for that. Stay tuned. We're back right after this.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
How high do you like your profit margin? CannabisRadio.com.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com. Doc Rob, the concierge for better living.
Cannabis is just one of the many great plants that we have on this planet called Earth that we can use consciously and intelligently to improve our well-being.
Take a real, raw, inside look at healthier living while sharing great ideas and improvements for a better quality of life.
Learning to live and live well is a lifelong process. This is a journey. You could be 80 years old or 8 years old. You can still learn something that's going to make tomorrow a little bit healthier, a little bit easier, a little bit happier, a little bit better.
The concierge for better living with Doc Rob. Only on CannabisRadio.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
I do not like them, Sam. I do not like green eggs and ham.
Okay. Maybe you're high, too.
Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
I have a package here for Radical Rick. Is there a Radical Rick here? How about a Rick Russ? Any Rick Russ? Somebody named Freddie Barack has sent him a package. Anybody? What is that? Sounds like a skunk. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Oh, thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody. Just 9 minutes after 4 o'clock p.m. here in the Pacific time zone. So glad to have you here. Apparently there's a package for me from somewhere, but I don't know why we're missing it. Something coming from Freddie Farrak. Must be an update. Is Freddie out there for an update? Let's take a look at the flux capacitor. Oh, yes. Looks like the flux capacitor is firing up. Freddie, are you out there?
Stupid prohibition stories. As a public service, the Russ Belville Show reminds you that smoking marijuana does not make one stupid. However, some stupid people do smoke marijuana, and prohibition is always waiting for another victim. Learn your lesson from today's stupid prohibition stories.
With your stupid prohibition stories, I'm old-timey 1920s radio reporter Freddie Farrak. This just in, Rock Hill, South Carolina. A Rock Hill man was cited for marijuana marijuana possession after a patrol officer first smelled the marijuana from his patrol car through the air vents, then pulled alongside the man's car and saw the man smoking marijuana, according to the police report. In the incident Tuesday, the Rock Hill Police Department officer was on Dave Lyle Boulevard heading away from the downtown when he, quote, could smell the odor of marijuana, end quote, coming from a Jeep directly in front of him, the report states. The officer turned his air conditioning up to high and could still smell the pot, the report states. The officer then pulled up next to the Jeep and saw the man inside, quote, actively smoking a small brown marijuana cigarette, end quote, the report states. The officer made a traffic stop and the driver, Andrew Greasert, age 24, told the officer he had been smoking marijuana and dropped the blunt on the floorboard when he saw the police car. The officer asked Greasert if there was more marijuana in the car, and he gave consent to search the Jeep. Inside the glove box, police found 6.23 grams of marijuana. Greasert, who according to online court records was charged in March for unlawful carrying of a pistol, was cited for possession of marijuana, first offense, and released. I'm Freddie for Rock with your stupid prohibition story. Somebody better check that flux capacitor. I think we need a firmware update or something. Freddie sounded pretty hectic there at the end. Okay, so let's see if we got this story straight. Guy's driving down the road, smoking a blunt in his Jeep. So rank, the cop behind him can smell it. Pulls up next to him, sees him smoking the joint, and then after getting pulled over, says, oh yeah, I was smoking a joint, and if you'd like, check my car. There's about 6 levels of fail in that story in there. All right, so fail number 1. Let's make this a teachable lesson. We shouldn't have to say this, but every time this story comes up, we have to say it. Don't smoke pot while you're driving your car. And I don't say that because I'm afraid of your driving ability while you're smoking pot driving your car. Not at all. Not in the least. In fact, I think you're a better driver when you're smoking. People tell me that. I'm a better driver when I smoke pot. I actually think you are. I actually believe it. Not because any sort of physiological tests are going to prove that, because most of them will show very little effect or even some decline in some abilities. But because I believe as a pot smoking driver, you're less prone to road rage. You're more patient. You're less likely to speed. You're less likely to exhibit aggressive driving behaviors. And because you do still have somewhat the fear of getting pulled over and busted for weed, you're going to obey the laws a little more diligently. We'd hope. So again, yeah, not at all concerned that you are a risk on the road because you're smoking and driving. By my account, as far as I'm concerned, smoke them if you got them. Hell, there's some states in America, there's some places you drive across this country where smoking and driving ought not just be legal, it ought to be mandatory. If you are crossing Kansas or Nebraska, east to west, they ought to just issue you joints at the border. Or Texas, man. You ever driven across West Texas? Oh my God. Rest areas should just have vaporizers waiting for you. That's what I'm telling you, man. I've driven a lot of this country, and I'm not worried about you smoking and driving. The reason I tell you not to smoke and drive is just so you don't get busted for it. That's all. If no pot smoker ever smoked and drove, then 90% of pot arrests would go away. Most of those possession arrests come by way of a cop encounter in a traffic situation. I might not be accurate on the 90% number, but it's a lot of them. If no tokers smoked and drove, we could probably get rid of a whole lot of marijuana arrests. So that was the number one fail. Don't smoke and drive. Now, again, I'm not telling you not to because it's a danger on the roads. It's just a danger to you getting busted. The other thing that's the fail in this story is the guy not asserting his rights after the cop busts him. Now, you may think, okay, he smelled my blunt. He saw me. He pulled up alongside and saw me smoking. What's the point in me not talking? What's the point in me trying to deny it when he saw me? He caught me. I know a lot of people that think that way. Keep in mind, when we're talking about the U.S. justice system, we're talking about an adversarial system where you are innocent until proven guilty. So make them prove you guilty. You may be guilty. They may have seen you. You may know that they know you're guilty. Everybody involved may know you're guilty. But until it's proven in the court of law, you are innocent. When that cop pulled that guy over, so I drove up alongside you. I saw you smoking weed. I smell a strong odor of marijuana. Officer, I'm afraid answering any of your questions right now might tend to incriminate me. Am I being detained? Am I under arrest? If you're going to keep asking me questions, I'd really like to speak to a lawyer first. That's what you do, folks. And I know how scary it is. I've been pulled over a number of times. I've failed this test myself. But that's what you do. And cops, they are trained, man. They are trained in citizen encounters to figure out ways to ingratiate themselves to you, to make you drop your guard, and most importantly, drop your rights. They'll start little friendly conversations. How you doing? Oh, good to see you. Blah, blah, blah. I'm your friend. Say, where are you headed today? What's going on? Blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, well, you don't have any drugs in the car, do you? Yeah, it eventually gets to that. They're looking to make a bust. When cops pull you over, they aren't pulling you over for whatever the traffic stop is. They could give a shit whether you were driving 70 in a 55. They could really care less whether your blinker's working. That little crack in your windshield doesn't mean dick. All those things is their ticket to the amusement park called probable cause. It's their ticket to be able to get into your business and try to find a way to manufacture an arrest. That's their gig. Cops are arrest factories. That's their gig. So don't help them. Don't tell them you were smoking the blunt, you dropped it on the floorboards. Don't tell them they can go ahead and search the car. Look, by that point in the stop, that car was going to get searched. So why help? What, you think they're going to go, well, we should put this guy in jail for 6 months, but since he let us search his car, how about just 3? He was a good kid. You think that's going to be the way it goes down? They're going to appreciate your honesty. They're going to appreciate your cooperation. Yeah, they're going to appreciate it right into some overtime pay at the court and you right into a cell. So let's learn our lesson from this guy. Poor guy. Feel bad for him. And just remember to assert your rights. Don't smoke in your car. But if you're gonna, and you get caught, assert your rights. STFU. Stop talking in front of uniforms. Make that your mantra, and maybe we can keep some more pot smokers out of jail. We've got more coming up on the show. When we come back from break, we're going to talk about the pot legalization amendments. We've got California, Arizona, Nevada, Maine, Massachusetts. Those are likely to be voting on recreational legalization. And we've got California, Nevada, and Maine for sure. Arizona's already turned theirs in. Looks like they got enough. And looks like Massachusetts is going to make it as well. 5 states there. Then for medical, we got Missouri, Florida on the ballot. We got Arkansas looking to make the ballot. Montana has both a pro and an anti-medical marijuana looking to make the ballot. And when we come back from break, we're going to talk about North Dakota. Yes, North Dakota might be voting on a medical marijuana initiative. Good things are happening all across this country.
All we want to do is pump you up.
All right, time to get pumped up. It is 4:20 here in the Pacific Time Zone. Time for our union-mandated safety briefing. Let's be careful out there, tokers.
Seed to sale, clicks to conversions, and more. You're listening to the Cannabis Radio Network.
The next generation of vaporizers has arrived. Vuber vaporizers are blazing the way with unparalleled technology for oil, concentrate, or dry flower pens. Providing unsurpassed customer service and expert craftsmanship, Vuber vaporizers use cutting-edge technology, providing a power-packed, smoother vapor with a lifetime guarantee. Experience vaporizing the way it was meant to be. The Vuber way.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for Normal. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact NORML at NORML.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
You can find Radical Russ online everywhere. Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, SoundCloud, Snapchat, LinkedIn, and Boise State University's 2400 baud modem bulletin board system from 1985.
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your cannabis boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your cannabis needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit CannabisFinanceBootCamp.com.
Remember, friends, there's more to life than marijuana. I just can't remember what it is. Why'd I come in here? This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Much better. 23 after the hour. Welcome back. It's Toker Talk Radio. And as we mentioned earlier, North Dakota might be making the ballot for marijuana, for medical marijuana, I should say. The story comes to us from Inforum, where the North Dakota Department of Health is trying to scare people about the proposed medical marijuana initiative. They estimate that medical marijuana would add 32 full-time employees to the Department of Health and cost $8.7 million to administer in the first 2 years. This memo says the revenue generated from medical marijuana registrations and fees, quote, is not sufficient to cover the costs of implementation or the ongoing costs associated with the measure, end quote, and they'd have to find a funding source. Let me call bullshit on this. This is nothing but scaremongering from the North Dakota Department of Health. I have yet to hear of any state medical marijuana program that's running in the red. I have yet to hear it. Most of the states that I hear with medical marijuana programs are actually having to lower their fees because they're bringing in too much money, and their state laws require that they are revenue neutral. Montana just lowered its medical marijuana program fee from $75 a year to $5. Doesn't seem like Montana's going broke administering medical marijuana, and Montana and North Dakota right next door to each other, Colorado lowered their fee recently. I think it was lowered down to $15. It was $35, I think. So we're state of Oregon. Now, Oregon's special because we charge $200 a patient and $200 a grower at this point, which is the highest fees in the nation. And even those fees are ridiculous because before those fees had been risen, back in the day when the fees were still pretty high, we were running $1 million surpluses in the Oregon medical marijuana program. So this idea that they're going to need $8.7 million to administer North Dakota and it's not going to be offset by fees is ridiculous. Now, the fiscal note for a medical marijuana legalization bill in February of 2015 in North Dakota, they tried to pass medical marijuana on a legislative bill. And these bills get these fiscal notes, these analyses of how much it's going to cost. That analysis was $3.9 million. So you're trying to tell me that the government proposed medical marijuana was going to cost less than half what you're estimating the public medical marijuana program would cost. No, this is really just an effort to try to scare North Dakotans who are kind of hit right now because, North Dakota went through this boom with fracking and the oil industry and so forth. And now they're kind of back on tough times again. So the state's, trying to deal with these economic downturns, trying to scare these North Dakota voters into thinking, well, medical marijuana is nice, but we just can't afford it. I don't think that's going to work. I really don't think anybody who's persuaded to vote for medical marijuana or persuaded to vote against medical marijuana is going to change their mind based on the cost of the program. Really? Well, I really would like to stop arresting cancer patients for smoking weed, but gosh, we just can't afford it, so let's keep arresting them. Yeah, who would think that? Right? That's ridiculous, right? Nobody's arguing the cost in their head as to whether or not we ought to stop locking up sick people for using a plant. At least it shouldn't be in anyone's analysis, right? Are there really people out there? Well, as long as we can afford it, let's keep locking up cancer patients. I don't think that's the way most people think. Now, on Monday, the supporters of North Dakota's medical marijuana initiative delivered about 17,600 signatures to the Secretary of State, and they require 13,452. So 13,452 signatures divided by the 17,600 that they turned in means they're going to need 76.4% validity rate. So I wouldn't get my hopes up for North Dakota voting on medical marijuana. When you get a professional signature gathering crew together, they're aiming for 2/3 validity. If they can get 67% validity, that's like we succeeded. We did great. Aiming for 70% validity is about the outside range that I've ever heard as to how well these signature gathering campaigns go. If they're able to get almost 13,500 signatures out of over 17,500 signatures, that would be, I think it would be some sort of record as far as a marijuana ballot initiative goes. 76.4% approval, I don't think that's going to happen. I wish it would. I wish this would make it to the ballot because it's going to make 3 ounces legal. It's going to have your typical qualifying conditions: cancer, epilepsy, AIDS, glaucoma, ID cards, so forth. I don't find information here as to whether or not they would allow for home cultivation in this initiative. Still quickly looking through the bill. We'll see if we can find any information on Ballotpedia about this. By the way, if you're one of those nerds out there like me, one of these wonky types that likes to follow the government and what's going on with marijuana initiatives, I encourage you to check out the Ballotpedia. Ballotpedia, like Wikipedia, right? Ballotpedia, Ballotpedia. And they got a search up there. You can type in marijuana. And they've got marijuana initiatives on the ballot page that breaks it down by state and by year. So you can find out what's going on there with any initiative. And so we'll look up North Dakota here. North Dakota legalization of medical marijuana initiative. And let's see, make it legal to grow. Let's see, it does say make it legal to grow and possess and use and distribute it. Oh, that's legalization of marijuana. I'm sorry. Let me get the medical marijuana. Legalization is not going to happen. Medical marijuana in North Dakota. This also contains every initiative that's proposed. So even if they are, guano loco, no chance in hell type initiatives, they're on there. So the medical marijuana initiative users would need identification cards, outlines the procedures for growing, cultivating, and dispensing marijuana. And unfortunately, this does not look as though it's got home grow as a part of this. Now, they tried to get this on the ballot in 2012. And if you'll remember, there was a scandal back in 2012 because there were some football players found from, I think it was North Dakota State, that had fraudulently entered signatures because they were getting paid for the signatures. And so they entered a bunch of fake ones and such. And that's what derailed medical marijuana in North Dakota back in 2012. I wish it would make the ballot this year. I would love to be covering it on marijuana election night this November 8th. Unfortunately, I think 76% is a lot to ask in trying to get signature validity. A lot of these signatures are disqualified because people move, or they signed twice, or they can't find a valid voter registration. It's going to be really hard to pull 76%. Now, looking at some of the other news out there, there's a new series coming to Netflix. Chuck Lorre is behind it. And if you don't know Chuck Lorre, you probably know some of his shows like 2.5 Men or The Big Bang Theory. In other words, Chuck Lorre is the producer of some of the most popular TV comedies that have appeared in the past 10 years. Anyway, he's got a new pot comedy coming up. It's going straight to Netflix. It's called Disjointed. Get it? It's got the word joint in it. It's called Disjointed, a pot-themed workplace comedy. A pot-themed workplace comedy. I'm surprised. Let me take bets here. I don't know what the over-under is on this, but I want to take bets on how soon it will be before we hear this pot comedy called Disjointed, before we hear it described as The Office meets Weeds. Taking bets. How soon? I've got a week. 1 week. 1 week from today, by July 21st, we will hear this. We will see this in some story referred to as The Office meets Weeds. Anyway, the show stars Kathy Bates as the owner of a weed dispensary in Los Angeles. And it's going to also include a cast with 3 bud tenders, her 20-something son, and a deeply troubled security guard. And then the disturbing part of this description, all of them are more or less constantly high. Really? This is what I worry about as marijuana becomes mainstreamed and we get picked up by, the entertainment media, is this need to portray marijuana users as somehow crazy or wacky or different or out there or something like that. This idea that the people working at the dispensary, including the security guard, would be more or less constantly high, that's a little troublesome to me. When I go to dispensaries, most of the people I see working in the dispensaries are waiting to get off work so they can smoke some pot. They can't smoke on the job. And then the other part about this too, and I guess this takes us into a little more of a philosophical direction on the discussion, but what do you mean high? I have this sometimes when I'm interviewed on the radio, and especially if it's more of a easygoing shock jock morning radio kind of thing. Well, they say, "Are you high right now?" And I really don't know how to answer the question. Although sometimes I'll ask, I don't know, "Are you drunk right now?" But it's a hard question for me to answer because am I high? I don't know if I'm high. I know that I've smoked pot today, recently. But what is this high you speak of? I know that after I take my hit of cannabis in whatever form, vapor pen or marijuana joint, that I feel relaxation and creativity, sometimes some energy. But am I high? What does this mean? Does high mean disoriented? Does high mean discombobulated, unable to function? Dysfunctional? Well, if that's the case, then no, I'm not high. I'm perfectly functional. I'm doing just fine. Does high mean not sober? Well, if that's all it means, if high means currently under the influence of the substance as opposed to not being under its influence at all, then yeah, I guess I'm high. Because I've consumed cannabis and there's enough of it in my blood system, it's still affecting me. But when they say that the cast of this sitcom is going to be more or less constantly high, that leads to me thinking of actors trying to portray a stereotype of what they think being high constantly is. We'll see. I'll update my Netflix subscription just so I can check this out for you. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back and look at ballot initiatives all across the United States and how they affect the presidential election when we return.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Every strain, every sale, every medical study. Keep it right here on the Cannabis Radio Network. Cash?
Sorry.
I don't carry around cash, and I don't want to use the ATM and pay surcharges.
You don't need to carry cash. Haven't you heard about PayQuick?
Okay, tell me about PayQuick.
It's the safe and easy way to pay. It works just like your debit card to securely pay for your purchase, and it gives you rewards points every time you use it.
Nice.
PayQuick, the safe and easy way to pay. PayQuick.com.
It's time to Hemp Present
with Enadina Stanger.
I say to you with all the fervor of my soul that God intended men to be free. Rebellion against tyranny is a righteous cause. And I believe that with every ounce of my soul, we are fighting a righteous cause because people need nature.
Marijuana! Hemp Present, only on Cannabis Radio.
Sweet sativa.
The Russ Belville Show, providing dictionaries to drug czars since 2009.
Are you playing an acoustic guitar but want to be louder without an amp? Try a resonator guitar. The fingerboard extension has National Resophonic and other resonators, square necks and round necks. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com. Go wild hog in the woods.
Pod 2.0. It's not your father's Woodstock weed. This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. 38 after the hour, and we're taking a look at the presidential election. There's an interesting article in the USA Today entitled, "For the Record, Don't Vote for President, Vote for Pot." Caught my eye, of course. And this particular article talks about some of the states that have marijuana legalization on the ballot, as well as some other ballot initiatives. And I like how it refers to them. It refers to them as the Sports Illustrated sneaker phone of elections. That basically, if you're not excited about the presidential election, and a lot of people are very disappointed in the idea of it being Trump versus Clinton, that the ballot initiatives could make a huge difference in the get out the vote efforts for one side or the other, given that the Democratic and the Republican candidates are the most disliked candidates for those two parties ever. It could be the ballot initiatives that determine which party gets more of its vote out. And so taking a look at some of these, it's kind of interesting. First, we have Arizona. Arizona has 11 electoral votes. The presidential candidate that gets 270 of them is the one that wins. You've always got to remember that with presidential elections, that the popular vote doesn't mean squat. So don't care about any of these polls that say, well, nationally, Clinton's up 5 points on Trump, or Clinton's within neck and neck of Trump. It doesn't matter. It matters on a state-by-state basis where they're at. And then you got to add up those states to come up to 270. So we start with Arizona, got 11 electoral votes. Hillary Clinton's up by a half point. Half point. Statistically meaningless. Dead tie heat, Trump and Clinton in Arizona. So what else is on the ballot? Well, as we know, recreational marijuana legalization is likely to be on the ballot. Now, we do have to worry about shenanigans. The elected officials in Arizona hate marijuana, and they will do everything they can, including dirty tricks, to try to keep it from making the ballot, especially because a lot of these Arizona officials are Republicans, and they know that if the recreational marijuana legalization makes the ballot, that drives the turnout of younger voters and more liberal voters, and that can only help Hillary Clinton. So these Republican officials in Arizona, it behooves them to want to see recreational marijuana not make the ballot. It also helps on those down ticket votes as well. Some of these officials themselves may be up for election, and with recreational pot on the ballot, it could hurt their chances. There's also a vote up to increase the minimum wage in Arizona. I don't know that that'll have much effect either way for any of the presidential candidates. Now, the other wild cards we have to think about in this race, Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, and Jill Stein, the Green candidate. There are still a lot of Bernie or bust people that are upset and will never vote for Hillary Clinton, myself included, who may be looking at voting at Gary Johnson or Jill Stein. Arizona famously had some of those voting irregularities that a lot of the Sanders supporters point to as part of this rigged election. So the marijuana legalization vote just may bring them out and bring more votes in for Johnson and Stein. Next, of course, would be Colorado. Colorado contains 9 electoral votes. Hillary Clinton's up by 7.7%. Marijuana legalization is already the law of the land in Colorado as a constitutional right. But they also have on the ballot increased minimum wage, assisted suicide, a state health care system, and the right to a healthy environment. These all sound to me like something that's going to drive a more liberal turnout. But you could see state health care system and assisted suicide perhaps bring out the business type voters who wouldn't want to see those things happen. I think it's pretty much, though, these types of initiatives are going to help Hillary Clinton and to some extent Jill Stein. In Florida, big prize in Florida, 29 electoral votes. Currently, Donald Trump is up by 0.2%, so a statistical tie in Florida. Medical marijuana is already on the ballot. How does this affect this race? I don't know, because Trump has already said he's for medical marijuana. Hillary has said she's for medical marijuana. All 4 candidates are for medical marijuana. The question is, the voters in Florida that are going to want to see medical marijuana make it, is that going to drive a youth turnout, or, as I more likely predict, going to drive even greater elderly turnout as older voters want that access to medical marijuana? If that's the case, I think that could end up benefiting Trump. And if Trump takes Florida, that could spell some disaster for the Clinton campaign. Next, we have Michigan. There are 16 electoral votes up in Michigan. Clinton is currently up by 4% there. Marijuana legalization and recreational marijuana are trying to make the ballot. Medical and recreational issues are trying to make the ballot. I don't know. Those might be hamstrung this year and not make it. The other ones up for the initiative process are a death penalty for murdering police and correctional officers. Now, that's the kind of thing that would drive a conservative turnout. That would drive a more a white audience, more tough on crime type conservative voters. I think that could give some help for Donald Trump. He's already specifically called for a death penalty for killing cops. Now, Hillary Clinton, she's also expressed support for the death penalty, but expressed also problems with how it's administrated. She's kind of wishy-washy on this issue. I can't see it helping her in any way. So I think for Michigan, that death penalty for murdering police actually helps Trump out a bit. And I don't think medical or recreational marijuana end up making the ballot in Michigan, so that won't balance it out in Hillary's favor. Personally, if I have to decide on this, I'm anti-death penalty, just to let you know. I don't think there's any time where the state should be sanctioned to kill its own citizens, no matter what they've done. And I understand the Constitution has a death penalty in it. It says we shall not deprive people of life or liberty without the due process of law, which implies that with the due process of law, you have the right to deprive people of their life. And there are death penalties cited for treason and insurrection in the Constitution as well. So it's not that I don't think it's constitutional per se. I just think it's unconstitutional in practice. I think in practice, we can never come to a perfect enough criminal justice system to ensure that the death penalty is fair. There have just been too many people that have been exonerated, too many people who sat on death row who should be dead, who were found to be innocent, too many people who were executed who were later found to be innocent. And this idea that we're going to institute a death penalty just for killing cops, well, why cops? Why not a death penalty for killing firefighters and EMTs? And who else gets special consideration? Elected officials? If you kill your mayor, automatic death penalty. If you kill a city councilman, automatic death penalty. How far does this go? And is the idea of coming up with a death penalty for killing police officers to stop the deaths of police officers? Because, fewer police officers have been killed year after year for the past decade or so. It's been some of the safest times to have been a cop ever. Is this an overreaction to the slayings of the cops in Dallas? I think so. Is it going to be some sort of a deterrent to killing a cop? Knowing you'd get the death penalty? Is that going to deter you from if you're in a situation where you're shooting at a cop, are you really making rational decisions at that point? No, I think this is overkill. Anyway, let me get back to the marijuana stuff and the rest of the ballot initiatives. In Nevada, and it is Nevada, by the way, people. Some of you commentators, some of you news people out there, learn how to pronounce the names of our own states. It's Nevada, not Nevada. It's Nevada. Oregon is not a state. Oregon is a state. Pet peeves. Anyway, Nevada has 6 electoral votes. Hillary Clinton's up by 4% there. They've got 2 initiatives. They've got the recreational marijuana is already on the ballot in Nevada. And you would think that would help Hillary a little bit because it would bring out younger, more progressive voters. But there's also a ballot initiative to close the gun show loophole, to set up a gun sale background checks, require all gun sales in Nevada to have to go through a licensed gun dealer, even between private parties. Like if grandpa wants to sell his gun to his nephew, he has to get it to a licensed dealer first, who then sells it to his kid, right? So that's the kind of thing that's going to bring out a lot of anger and ire in Nevada. That's going to bring out a lot of your conservative farm ranch types in opposition to this. So you get a boost on one side for the recreational pot. You'd get opposition coming from the other side for the gun issue. I think if this benefits anybody, it's Gary Johnson. Because Gary Johnson would be both against the gun sale background checks and for the recreational marijuana thing. So for the 2 main candidates, I don't think it helps either one of them. And finally, in this article, this again from the USA Today, that Virginia, with 13 electoral votes, Clinton's up by 4%. There is a right to work amendment. Now, I know this is off topic, but right to work, right? I always like to call these right to work cheaply and for no benefits. Idaho, when I grew up, was a right-to-work state. And what these right-to-work states are really just ways of busting unions. It means that a employer cannot require a workplace to be a union workplace. And of course, if a workplace isn't all unionized, then it's not unionized at all. We all stick together, or we all hang together, we all hang separately, kind of thing. You can't be half union, right? So it basically kills unions. Well, this is already in effect in Virginia since 1947. It's been a right-to-work state. But what they're doing in Virginia is moving it from a statutory law to try to make it part of the Virginia Constitution. So making this part of the Virginia Constitution would then make it impossible for any sort of lawmaking to address this union situation. Basically, they just want to, encase Virginia as a right-to-work state in carbonite. They want to make it permanent, right? Or a permanent right-to-work state. I think that ends up helping Donald Trump, actually, because he's the anti-union guy. And I guess Gary Johnson would be kind of anti-union as well, so it probably helps them both at some point. Gary Johnson's currently getting 8% in the polls in Virginia. All right, so that's a look at the initiatives that are happening across the country and how they may have an effect on the presidential race. And speaking of the presidential race, quick update. We mentioned how Donald Trump is set to announce Indiana Governor Mike Pence as his vice presidential pick. He was going to announce it tomorrow morning, but because of the horrific truck attack, which is increasingly looking to be an act of terrorism, due to that attack in France, he has postponed that announcement. So we'll hear probably that on Monday. We're going to take a break. We'll wrap things up here from the Ardea Condominium Towers in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon, right after this.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
We have your smoking section right here. This is the Cannabis Radio Network.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about teen drug use from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A recent survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control indicates that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the rate of marijuana consumption among high school students has not increased. In fact, in legal states like Colorado, teen use has actually decreased significantly. It's simply no longer a big deal for teenagers in legal states. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
The Russ Belville Show. We're as much like Cheech and Chong as ordinary Americans are like the Three Stooges. Hey, Mo!
In the past year to the military and to the...
Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
2.0. It's not your father's Woodstock weed. This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Wow, just catching up on the attack in France. They're saying now 60 plus dead, over 100 injured, as a truck loaded with grenades and explosives barreled through crowds gathered on the beach to enjoy fireworks on a beautiful night in Nice, France. Wow. Facebook has opened up its keep safe, or its safe feature. I forget what it's called, but they got a feature there for the people in Nice to let their relatives know that they're okay through Facebook. So if you've got any relatives out there, Facebook might be the best way to find out what's going on. Before we go, I just wanted to comment on a couple of quick stories. New York Times has a story out, how much weed is in a joint. Pot experts have a new estimate. Studies have pegged the average joint to anywhere between 0.66 grams. That was one study, 2/3 of a gram for a joint. That sounds about right for my joints, about 2/3 of a gram. Federal government has said it's closer to 2/5 of a joint, 0.43 grams, 2/5 of a gram, should say, 0.43 grams. Pot smokers themselves in a poll in High Times said that a typical joint contains a gram, but a lot of folks said about half a gram. Well, the latest estimate from the government, which has taken into account seizures and cost and user reports and all the data they could gather, says that the average joint is 1/3 of a gram, 0.32 grams. I think that's probably a good number for average joint. Anywhere from 1/3 of a gram to 1/2 a gram. I know when I get a gram of weed given to me, because I go to these events where people just give me weed. Oh, the troubles I have, right? And they give me a gram of weed, I can generally roll 2 joints out of a gram of weed. So I roll thick joints. What can I say? Well, folks, that's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us. Great to have you here. Make sure you are with us tomorrow. We'll have Don Morse on the show. He'll be here talking about the Oregon Fair, where there will be demonstrations for the first time of live cannabis plants. All that and more. He'll give us the lowdown on what's happening for that. Thanks for joining us. We love each and every one of you, some of you more than others, but all of you at least a little bit. For everyone here at Cannabis Radio, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it.